In today's world, the burden of mental health issues is among the highest of all diseases. What's worse is great minds alike struggle with these issues and aren't appreciated but looked down upon. In 2009, author Elizabeth Gilbertson's speech, Your Lucid Creative Genius, brought awareness toward modern society's portrayal towards contemporary artists and their work. Her speech captivated the audience and shed light on two major flaws we face today. Her speech taught the audience a successful way to deal with failure and brought awareness to the stigma saying that all artists are mentally unstable. So Elizabeth M. Gilbert is an American journalist and author. She is best known for writing novels, including her bestseller memoir, Eat, Pray, Love. And when she's not writing, she likes being an advocate for good mental health. So she gave this speech at a TED Talk conference in February of 2009 in Long Beach, California. And not only was the audience intrigued, but they were emotionally involved, as most of the people listening were other artists.
We writers, we kind of do have that reputation, and not just writers, but creative people across all genres, it seems, have this reputation for being enormously mentally unstable. And all you have to do is look at the very grim death count in the 20th century alone of really magnificent creative minds who died young and often at their own hands, and even the ones who didn't literally commit suicide seemed to be really undone by their gifts. Norman Mailer, just before he died, last interview, he said, every one of my books has killed me a little more. An extraordinary statement to make about your life's work, but we don't even blink when we hear somebody say this because we've heard that kind of stuff for so long, and somehow we've completely internalized and accepted collectively this notion that creativity and suffering are somehow inherently linked, and that artistry, in the end, will always ultimately lead to anguish. And the question that I want to ask everybody here today is, are you guys all cool with that idea? Are you comfortable with that? Because you look at it even from an inch away, and I'm not at all comfortable with that assumption. I think it's odious, and I also think it's dangerous, and I don't want to see it perpetuated into the next century. I think better if we encourage, our great creative minds to live,
While Linder. In today's world, people are more stressed than ever. Elizabeth is striving for a change and a sense of awareness regarding the mindset and mental health of today's creative minds. Her message can also relate to almost any job profession. People need to learn that if you fail, don't just give up, try again. In her speech, she describes philosophy from ancient Greece it's like a spiritual entity called a genius. And artists back then, they would have this genius that helped them with the creative process. The artist would show up and put the work in, and if the genius didn't put in their effort and put it in the creative side and the flair, and it failed, so be it, they would try again. This genius acts as a protective psychological construct that when a project flops, the artist doesn't completely blame themselves, and when it's a success story, they're not engulfed by narcissism because they have this genius, this so-called other person helping them. And her message will endure because it has been proven to help artists in the way past and can once again continue to help in the future. Her speech was significant then because her message was proven by a recent success story. After her success of her book, Eat, Pray, Love, she was met with many questions such as, how will your next book ever live up to that? This notion made her really stressed and filled with anxiety, but she then learned this idea of this so-called genius, and using this method has helped her really deal with her anxiety regarding her work, and she's wrote many books since then. Her speech was significant then because she presented herself as an example of it working. It's significant more now because life continues to become more stressful every day, it seems like. In today's world, a proven way of helping with that stress is a necessity. Her message continues to make more people, not just artists, aware and familiar with this constructive creating. Her message is being used to help people in more modern situations, not just then in Greece, and more situations other than art forms. Lastly, her speech is trying to break the stigma that all artists are mentally unstable by bringing awareness towards new ways of creating. Now we go to rhetorical devices. The first is antidiploses, and it says, he would be lit from within and lit from below and all lit with fire of divinity. She's basically referring to in one part of her speech, she talks about dancers and performers in Northern Africa, and how once they start their performance, they're just engulfed in it all, and they just have like a moment. That's why it says light up with like fire and divinity. Next is personification, and it says, and she would run like hell to the house, and she'd be getting chased by this poem. So basically, she's referring to the poet Ruth Stone, and Ruth Stone's so-called genius is basically she'd be working out in her yard and stuff, and all of a sudden she could feel a poem coming to her over the landscape, and she'd rush to the house to try to write it on paper before it passed through her, and if it did, so be it. She'd wait until next time. And finally, allusion. She alludes to her book, her memoir, Eat, Pray, Love, constantly throughout the speech, directly and indirectly, just using it as an example of her success story and her downfall and her bringing herself back up. Next we have ethos, pathos, and logos. Starting with ethos, my speaker uses ethos because she herself dealt with mental health issues regarding her work. She can feel for a contemporary artist as she is one herself, and she can provide tips for them to help them. And her methods of dealing with stress from the creative process have been proved effective, so why not help other people, right? Next is pathos. My speaker uses pathos by talking about the grim results of artists struggling. She hints at the large counts of writers who have taken their lives or suffered depression in the 20th century, and she gets the audience to feel for these artists, and talking about her midlife crisis also adds to the emotional part. And finally, we have logos. My speaker uses logos by talking about the destiny and consequences of stress. People, in this case contemporary artists, will continue to be broken down by stress if they can't deal with it. Having a coping mechanism like a genius has been proven to work, so why not use it for years to come? As you can see, Elizabeth Gilbertson's speech, Your Elusive Creative Genius, will endure for years to come. Her message informs people of society's portrayal towards artists. The speech reflects on current issues regarding mental health, which is important as more and more people struggle with this and need help. We need positive change, and her speech is willing to do that. Thank you.